Yeah, as you saw, today's topic is about password managers. It's a topic I really like because many years ago I started dealing with this pressing issue of having so many different accounts and so many different pages and websites. I wasn't able to manage that anymore, and I started doing bad things. Those bad things we will discuss a little later. And during today's session, I want to make it a little bit more interactive than usual. So usually we have the case that somebody presents, and at the end we have a QA session. I would like to do that QA session also at the end, but during the talk we will do some real-time polls. So I would suggest anybody in the room to grab your phone, check out this QR code or type in this URL to your web browser, and soon we will have some real-time polls. And the idea behind it is that everybody can just answer without feeling ashamed, maybe by doing something wrong or whatever. So you don't have to really worry about if you give an answer, and we all can have a look what everybody is doing. Okay, so today we want to talk about something everybody has, but actually nobody really likes, and this is passwords. Or does anybody like passwords? You like passwords, okay. No, actually nobody really likes passwords, but they are necessary. Because if you log in somewhere, just having a user account wouldn't be secure. You need to have some special secret token. And today it's just the password. It could be something else, but most of the time it's a simple password. So it's about time for the first real-time poll. So make sure you go to the website. And it's not yet live. So I will turn it on just in a second, but is everybody ready? No. Not yet. So URL is quite short. If you can get this QR code from the distance, then do it that way. Okay, I'm going to leave this mode already and go to the actual poll. Okay, so I would say let's start the voting.
This is the page.
This is actually the page, so follow this QR code or type in this URL.
No hand raised.
Is it working? Okay. So I think we don't see the answers here. Okay, we have 30 participants already. Okay, still going on. Okay. Nothing coming anymore? Okay, so let's have a look. What are the results? So we have 19 voters, 20 voters, oh, still going on. And 13 of those shared a password via email or instant messenger in the past. Actually, I expected that this will be much higher. I expect that this will be almost 100%. Maybe somebody's not telling the truth here. The second one is a little bit more difficult because if you're not familiar with it, you probably didn't recognize, especially if it's much in the past. Recently, web browsers will tell you if you put in credentials and submit them when you're not on an HTTPS secured site. But 13 is also a lot. Then we have save password on an unencrypted file on your computer. Yeah, I also think this probably everybody has done it. And obviously the classic, putting your password on a post-it, pin it to your computer or your screen, and everybody can just copy it and use the same password for more than one service. Okay, this is the winner, obviously, because it's just too many passwords. So who can remember all the passwords? So you start to reuse them. And let a website generate your password. This is surprisingly low. That's interesting. Because this could be a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. So the good thing is if you're choosing a password generator, that password generator could choose a very good and secure password. On the other hand, if you're trusting a third party that can set cookies on you, it's maybe a little bit dangerous to let them generate your password. Especially if you're on the web doing a lot of other stuff and using that generated password on another website. All right, thank you very much for the participation so far. So I think all of these aspects are clear why they are dangerous. So for example, if I put my password somewhere on a post-it or on a sheet, what happens if somebody else finds it? So they can just copy the password and log in. Putting passwords on unencrypted files on your computer is also quite dangerous. So what happens if somebody gets somehow access to your hard drive? You just need to unplug it or tear it out of the computer, and then you have the password. It's there, it's not even encrypted. And instant messenger email is also kind of a classic. Usually we tend to send unencrypted emails, maybe over secured email servers, but still, if you maybe at some point have a man in the middle who has access to it, those people can read it, obviously. So it's all actually bad practice to do these things. And we can see here, I think the audience is quite profound in IT knowledge. And if we would do the same poll with like the average user, we would have much higher numbers. I think almost 200% in many of those aspects. Okay, so before we start right into it, let's think a little bit about digital identity. So what is a digital identity? We all probably have maybe 50, 100, or even 100 digital identities in many different IT systems. So we have our personal email address. Then maybe we have our work email address. Then with those email addresses, we are then signing up on many more services. And we have our Netflix account. We have our Amazon account. We are spreading our footprints everywhere. And this is altogether our digital identity, all summed up. And a nice question is that everybody should ask themselves, what is my digital identity worth? So what would I pay if somebody would steal my digital identity? And I think it's a lot of worth for everybody here. There are people who lost their digital identity, which means somebody else or more than one person got the identity and used it to do many different things, obviously not with consent of the actual owner of their digital identity. And this thing is called identity theft. There's even a movie out about identity theft. It's more a funny movie, but it shows actually what could happen if you lose your control about your digital identity. So in the end, we ask ourselves, how can we choose secure credentials, not reuse them, make them long enough, makes them hard to guess, and also save them or memorize them in a good way. And I think the last thing about memorization is the big issue here, because we have 50 or 100 login accounts. So how should I remember all these different accounts? It's not possible to do it just with this brain, unless I have a good system. Okay, let's talk a little bit about identity theft. So what is identity theft? It could be that somebody gets access to your social media accounts and is then acting on your behalf. I can tell a little story about that. In a past company I worked, there was like kind of a tradition. When somebody forgot to lock the computer, then people went there, took over this computer, which means they just opened the email program and then sent a mail to all employees and sent, that says something like, because I forgot to lock my computer, I'm going to pay a beer for everybody. So kind of a nice tradition that happened, I think, maybe twice a week. was kind of funny. But there was some guy, he really liked to play tricks on others. And there was this one day when he forgot to lock his computer. And so everybody was just walking there and thinking, okay, what can we do? We don't want to send this traditional mail. It's just boring. Everybody knows about it. And you have to know, he was a big fan of Bayern München. So what did they do? They went to Facebook. Everybody is logged in on Facebook all the time, even on your work PC. So what did they do? They went to the Facebook page of Borussia Dortmund and Schalke, and they liked it. And it was a disaster for him. But it was a good trick, because he was anyway playing tricks on anybody. And this is a quite simple example of what identity theft is. So somebody is acting on your behalf, and this is probably not what you want to do or what you want to have. It could be also something else, like people are sending mails over your mail server on your behalf. Probably something you don't want and something that is quite common. Or maybe somebody orders something, maybe even for you, but randomly from an online shop you are registered at. Maybe you're lucky and you anyway wanted to have that, but chances are low. So it's not a good thing to have. Now we're getting into the real criminal activity, which is people getting access to your bank account. They maybe withdraw money with a copy of your card, or by maybe saying in the bank that they are you, and maybe they have copied identity documents of yours. Maybe they're transferring money out of your account to another account. This is quite common. And the last one could be anything that involves criminal activity with your data. And this is nothing that just happens to third-party people. It can happen to everybody. And an article from last week shows it. So there was an article on golem.de, and it says that 90% of the login tries on online shops are coming from unknown sources, which means most or the majority of logins on online shops are probably tries to get access to an account that don't belong to the person who tries to log in, maybe even completely automated. So be aware that this is a big issue. Okay, so how can we prevent identity theft? Obviously, keep your password secure. How to do that? We said it already, do not reuse passwords at any time. And make sure when you give away your credentials, especially your password, you can trust the other party. Which, for example, means if you're putting your login data on a website, make sure you can trust that website. You probably heard of phishing. People try to collect your credentials. They try to mimic another website you know and that looks common to you, but it's actually not the website. So the best thing to do is check if the certificate is set, if there's like this green icon on top of the, in front of the URL bar, and maybe even check the certificate if it's a really important thing. And there's one other thing that you don't really can control. So this is data breaches. That means whenever you log on somewhere, you sign up, you're giving away credentials of yours, which means your email address, your password, hopefully in a hashed form in the database of the provider. But it happens now and then that databases are leaked out to the public, which means hackers somehow get access to that database and they provide, maybe in the darknet, maybe even publicly, those accounts. And if the password is not saved with a salt or a hash, then everybody has access to your clear password publicly. And you can bet that people will start trying that account not just on that service that was leaked, they will start using that on all the other services. So for example, a few years ago, I got suddenly a lot of spam due to a Tumblr leak. So I had a Tumblr account and they had a data leak, and then I was getting a lot of spam to my mailbox because they didn't get my password, but they got my email address. So many people, many organizations were sending me junk email. And the same happened to an email address I used for Adobe. So they also had a data breach, and suddenly I was getting a lot of emails there. So this is a real difficult thing because it's not in your hand. So you have to trust the other party, and the only thing to prevent that you really lose things is use different passwords for every service. Otherwise, it's really easy for others to take over your identity, at least on those services you use the same password for. And the question is, which of these passwords is more secure? So, yeah, this gibberish, first one, or this correct horse battery staple? I'm going to start it just now. Okay, we got here. Oh, I could have anyway watched it here, the results. We do it now. Okay. This time you can obviously just select one of the two answers. Okay, 19 participants, 20. I think this is what we got before, 21. Okay, it's kind of even here. That's interesting. Okay, so there are more people thinking that the first one is more secure. But it's kind of even. It's not really, yeah, there's not a huge majority for the first one. Okay, so let me show you a comic. Some of you may know already. Can everybody read this? So basically, what this comic is saying is you can have a password generated by some password generator. And it looks very secure because it's hard for you to memorize, and you think nobody would have guessed this. But a computer is quite good at guessing, especially if the system the computer tries to break in is not locking out if you try to do it really hard. So the comparison here is, if a computer would try to guess the first password with 1,000 guesses a second, it would probably take 3 days to get access. This is usually not the case because most systems will lock you out after the third fail, and then they will probably lock you out for 5 minutes. If you do it again, then they will lock you out for half an hour or something like that. But still, it's kind of easy to guess for a computer. And at the same time, it's really hard for a human to remember that password. And the second one is a password that is really easy to remember because it's just absurd putting together those words, and a human usually has an image in his mind and can remember this password. And the interesting thing is, the entropy of this password, so the data information of this second password, is much higher than the first one, which also makes it much harder for a computer to guess it in a brute force way. So it says here it would take 550 years with the same guessing rate of 1,000 guesses a second. So I really like this comic because on the bottom it says, through 20 years of effort, we have successfully trained everyone to use passwords that are hard for humans to remember, but easy for computers to guess. So this is actually a big problem. We should more use those passwords if we rely on memorizing them and not using something like this. We will come back to this a little later. But it's nice to see that some of you betted on this one. Okay, next one. What are the top 10 of most used passwords? I have a statistic from 2016, and it's not based on German users, it's based on international users. Any guess? What? I mean, everybody has a different phone number, so this will probably not be the most used one. It's what? Yeah, it's not a dynamic password, it's something everybody uses. Everybody uses exactly the same password.
Hello 1, 2, 3.
No, it's not?
Yes.
No? Password is right. Not kidding. Any other guess?
1, 2, 3. Admin.
No?
Secret.
Also not. Let's check the top 10 most used passwords. Who has at least one of those? No. So basically, it's just you're having a keyboard and you think, okay, what stupid thing could I do? Just do this. I mean, I'm just following a line or something. I mean, password is the most creative of those, if you think of it. Yeah. So that's my thoughts about it. So, I mean, don't ever use a password like this. And if you see somebody using passwords like this, tell them. It's your responsibility to tell people this is anything else than secure. So especially those lists are around in the internet that have like the top most 1,000 passwords or 10,000 passwords. And what you can do is simple. If you know email accounts from servers, you just try to use them brute force. And this is probably with a much higher probability than trying to breach into some software system. You will have a really high success rate on these passwords. Okay. Before we start and dive into password managers, let me tell you another recent story of mine. So, my tax consultant, I have one basic communication with my tax consultant, and it's like so. At the beginning of a month, I'm collecting all my bookings and I'm putting them into a special DATEV format, sending them to my tax consultant, and they usually send me back a PDF document that gives me all my accounting information, kind of a summary. And due to the GDPR, everybody knows, in June, they said, we're not sending you the PDF right away. Please provide a password, because we now will encrypt the PDFs. So what happened is they sent me this email and they said, please give us the password. Wow, okay. They wanted actually that I share my password via unencrypted email to them. So they didn't said, please come over to our office, or we're providing you one over a different channel that is maybe more secure. It's just email communication here. So this was like for me, okay, who's managing that in this tax consultancy? Then I asked myself, when I provide a password to them, how do they store it? Do they store it on a secure place, or is it maybe just an Excel file? And then I asked myself, what happens if there's a data breach? Especially if you consider other clients. Maybe I'm a little different kind of client, because maybe I'm like in IT and I think about, okay, maybe having a good password, but I suggest there are other clients that might be doing one of the two things. Maybe they are choosing just a weak passwords we just saw before, or they reuse a private password and they will send their tax consultancy a password that they maybe use for their email account or maybe for their bank account. And well, at the end of thinking about that, this was kind of my reaction. So I think a system like this is not giving more security, it's actually reducing the kind of security here, because you're sending passwords in clear text via email. And this is a really bad thing. We had it before, but I just have to share this story because it's kind of unbelievable for me that this is happening. And the reasoning behind this, GDPR, which is supposed to make everything more secure. So think about it. It's just absurd in my opinion. Okay, now we have enough motivation and introduction to actually talk about password managers. I will start giving a few definitions. We will talk about what kind of features they have, and then I would like to do a live demonstration. At the end, I will compare different password managers. I will show you mine that I use on a daily basis. I thought about showing you different, but there's actually not the time. So what I do in the end, I will try to compare the different options you have. And if you use others, then share this with us. So before I start, I give you my brief history of password managers. So I think it's maybe 8 years ago, something like that, I started thinking about password management, and I started using KeePass. It's an open source software, runs on Linux, runs on Windows and macOS, and it's quite simple to use. But at some point, I had my Android device, and I was like feeling, okay, I also want to have my passwords on my mobile phone because I have to sign in into so many services. And I was checking, okay, maybe not even having a nice synchronization option, also have a better user experience, because I have to say I was not really satisfied with the KeePass user experience. And then I found something that probably is not very known. It's an app that is called Save in Cloud, and it's developed by just a single developer. And I just checked it today. He is still doing it alone, and he is providing a Windows, macOS, Linux version, an Android app, iOS app. It's just amazing how this single developer is managing all this. And then I came 3 years ago to a situation where I started using macOS, and later on I started also having an iPhone as well. And then I wasn't really satisfied as much with the user experience, and I knew that there are other possibilities around. So I started using LastPass, but it didn't convince me again from the user experience point of view, and I ended up with 1Password. So I'm using that one for the last 3.5 years, roughly, and I'm quite satisfied. So this is actually the password manager I will show you, but this is just one option you could choose. So there are many options around, and I don't even have the time to collect all of the options. So there are much more than I can show you on one of the last slides. Also, in order to get a better idea of what others are using, I reached out on Twitter and LinkedIn and asked, if you are using a password manager, please share which kind of password manager. So the first one is the replies from Twitter. So 10 people replied, and we can see that KeePass is being used. There is Bitwarden, which is kind of interesting because it's also open source, like KeePass is. There is one user of NPass, also a paid version like 1Password is. And Soho Vault. Soho is a groupware, and it's nice if you're using that anyway because it's integrated nicely. And we have 2 users of passwordstore.org, which is basically a command line utility, and it's based on GNU Privacy Guard and Git. And I think it's nice for people, I think the first one said it, nerdy people who like to use Git and GPG for it, but I think it's not a choice for everyone. So if you want to synchronize via Git and you have your own server on it, you can use it, but it's probably not a choice that for the general public is kind of appealing. Okay, and we got 1Password 3 times. Yeah. Then the replies from LinkedIn. So we have KeePass again. We have also RoboFoam for the first time. Also kind of interesting is Chrome's built-in functionality. I will talk about that a little later. And we have 3 times 1Password. So maybe I choose 1Password by myself because people around me are using it. It's just kind of an impression from my circles. Could be different for everybody. Okay, so first thing of a password manager. The password manager itself is just an app, so it's a piece of software. But this piece of software does a very important thing. It manages a file or maybe a folder on your hard drive, maybe in the cloud, whatever you like. And this vault, that contains all the secretive information. So this vault contains your passwords, your login data, maybe it has the information where this login data can be applied. So for example, the website or the app that this is for. The vault can also save much more. That depends on the actual password manager. So if you like, you can put in your credit card, you can put in your social security number, you can maybe put in attachments like insurance copies or whatever. And the vault is secure, like your secure storage location, and it's encrypted. That's very important. And the encryption is based on a master password. So it means a password manager helps you to get rid of passwords, but still you need at least this one password. And this single password is very important because this will be the key to all the other passwords. So if you choose it, then choose it wisely. So this master password should be strong. We have seen before all the top 10 of weak passwords. Never ever choose one of those. Choose a really, really strong password. So make it long, make it really hard to guess. Everybody should find an own strategy for choosing it. You can also generate that if you like. In order to memorize it, especially if it's long and difficult, even for you, make sure you can memorize it. Or an even better way is use it on a regular basis. So if you start using a password manager, don't just put 1 or 2 passwords in there. Do more passwords in there, so you have to force yourself to use the master password. Maybe 3 times a day. You will not forget that password. And yeah, this is one lesson learned for me. Make sure you can also type this on mobile. At least if you want to use your password manager on your mobile phone. For my password is really gibberish, random stuff. And it's really easy for me to type that on a keyboard because it's just a sequence in my mind that I type on my keyboard. If I'm having this situation, it's really hard for me to type it in because it's not like something, a sentence or something that I can easily memorize and I know which keys to type. So I had a hard time when I started using that first time on the mobile to type in my master password. But good news is, on all password managers, you can change your master password. But just if you know your previous master passwords, obviously. Okay, is the cross-platform support. I put the 5 upmost operating systems on there and the 5 most used web browsers. So I think everybody has a different kind of combination they use. But if you choose a password manager and you want to obviously use it not just on one platform, make sure that password manager supports all the platforms you use. With the selection I do at the end, those password managers support usually all of those 10. And I think for every password manager that wants to get popular today, they need to have this cross-platform support. But if you choose a new kid on the block, a new app that just came out, they probably don't have support for everything. Just be aware of that. So before you choose one and start using it, make sure it runs on all your platforms. And this is also a thing for me because I think from web browser point of view, mostly Chrome. But when it comes to the operating system, I'm actually doing all the 5 of them. So I really need to have a good choice that works on all of them. And the second thing is, just having a client is not enough. You also need an app that really works for you and that is comfortable and easy to use and satisfying. Because if it's too difficult, you stop using it, and then you're losing the actual advantage of a password manager. Okay, next thing is, we're talking about cross-platform support. How do we synchronize? And yeah, let's start with the nerdy choices. You could have your private cloud. I think some of you have that. You probably run your own cloud server or an Nextcloud service. You can put your vault, so your folder or the files of the password manager, you can put them there and then access from different devices. Some password managers, for example, also allow synchronization just in your local home Wi-Fi. So they can synchronize over Wi-Fi, which is kind of nice because you don't need to set up a private server somewhere in the cloud where your fault is saved. Then you can just activate all the devices, maybe hit a button, sometimes it's running completely automated and they are in sync. Probably the choices for the public is maybe using the public cloud of the password manager. So many password managers, especially the paid services, come with an option where you can save the vault on their cloud. And the other solution, which was used in the past also a lot, is using third-party public cloud. So just synchronizing that file over Google Drive, iCloud, Dropbox, OneDrive. I think those are the most common ones. So it's again up to you, to your setup, to your preference. Just one thing to note is if you save that password maybe on your private cloud or third-party clouds, you have the problem that there is another password you always have to remember, because you have a user account to Google Drive, or you have a user account to Dropbox, or a user account to Nextcloud. And before you set up your password management on a new device, maybe you get a new Android phone or you're getting a new Linux laptop, before you actually can use your password manager, you have to make sure that this computer is connected to that specific cloud service. Just keep that in mind. If that's fine for you, okay, but this is another password you cannot save in the password manager, or at least you have to make sure that you have access from another device to that password. This is a nice thing how you can log out yourself. So just be aware of that. Okay. Does anyone know what a bus factor is? Yes?
The bus factor is the number of people who need to be run over by a bus that no one knows about password or project anymore.
Exactly. So it's a thing that happens to organizations. It means, imagine a person is falling under the bus, like here in this South Park episode, or maybe think of something completely different. Somebody is sick, somebody cannot come into work, and there is sensitive information that just the single person has. Then the organization cannot continue on the process, which means just giving one single person in your organization a very important password is probably a very dangerous thing. So what happens if that person is not coming in the office next day? So make sure you share passwords that are very important for your organization with much more than one person in the organization. And this is actually one thing where the sharing feature comes in. So right now we're just talking about one of those faults, but you can have multiple faults. Again, that depends on the actual password manager, but you can have something like a shared fault, and this can be accessed maybe by 2 people, maybe by 10 people. This is something you can set up by yourself, and this helps you that you're not having a problem with a bus factor. Also, one other thing, because it's related, when it comes to identity management, you should have some functional email addresses in your organization. So, for example, if you have a jobs at something or a contact at something email address, this email address or the emails that are being sent to those email addresses, they should be received by multiple people in the company. If that's not the case, the same thing can happen to you. Then you might have an administrator who can reset the password or maybe redirect the mails to somebody else. But just make sure there is a bus factor, and it's always good to have some kind of redundancy, to say it in a software engineering way. All right. What are other features of password managers? We had it before. A password generator is really useful because you don't need to generate or think of passwords by yourself. The password manager just generates randomly passwords for you. One thing that probably everybody knows from your favorite web browser is you log in somewhere and then the browser asks you, do you want me to save that information for later use? This should be obviously a feature of a password manager because it makes it much more comfortable in that way. Context awareness is something that is really useful. If I'm on a site or in a specific app and I'm opening my password manager, it should know that I'm currently using that app, and it should just show me the credentials for this particular app and not the 100 other items I have in my password manager. Automatic filling of forms is really nice because you don't have to copy and paste it in. That was basically an issue with KeePass in the first years, and I was really annoyed because I had my password manager, but I always had to open it up, type in the master password, then search for the right credentials, copy, paste that in the user input field. Then again, go to the password, copy that, put it into the password field, and submit the form. Really annoying, so make sure you have an autofill option. And sometimes they even offer an auto-submit, so you don't even have to click the submit button or the login button. It's just doing it magically. Yeah, make sure it has a browser extension. We had that before with the cross-platform compatibility. And there's also nice mobile support, but there are differences between iOS and Android. Android is a much more open platform, and they allow apps to be just a keyboard. So it's not an app that you can actually do much with it. It's just a different keyboard layout than the standard keyboard. And some password managers, they offer a custom keyboard. And then when you need to log in somewhere, you can just choose that custom keyboard that has access to the passwords. You unlock it, and then it's filling in the form with autofill again. Unfortunately, iOS is a little bit more restrictive. They allow custom keyboards now, but still most of the time they will prefer their own password store that they have on macOS and on iOS, and you won't have the chance to get your third-party password manager in there. So what you do is copy-pasting still. Okay, demo time. So we will start by signing up on a service, and the service is Twitter. Before we start, I have to say I'm using 1Password. I can just start it here. And it's basically an app that asks me now for my master password. And as soon as I type this in, I have all my passwords here. You can copy that, it's just a fake credit card, so it's not my real credit card. So what you can do in here is you can have a look at all your login items, and you can manage them. So it's basically like a nice database of credentials that you can manage. And this is the main program, the main application, and it also has a mini version over here. And this allows me to have quick access to some credentials. So for example, if I want to check my Twitter logins, then I just type in twit, and then I see, okay, I have my personal and my company Twitter account saved in here. But we don't want to use an existing account. We want to create a whole new account now, because I want to show you the full interaction with the password manager. So in addition to this app and this mini version on top, we have the browser plugin, and this is loaded in here. It basically looks like the mini version and gives you quick access. And here you already see this context awareness I was talking before. Now I'm on twitter.com, and now it's not showing me all the login items. It's showing me just exactly the 2 logins that are specific for Twitter. Okay, so let's start. I would like to sign up here. So the first steps don't have anything to do with the password manager. I'm just setting up a new Twitter account. Okay, let's use as inspiration something from our passwords. I would like to use email instead. And I just created an email before, like this. And we go to next. No, I don't want to have this. Yes, that's fine. Let's take this, sign up. Okay, now I need to choose a password. Now the first interaction with the password manager comes in. So what I can do now is I can click on this icon. What I like more is my shortcut. On 1Password it's option command hashtag. So it's basically just the same thing. And I can navigate to my password generator. The password generator gives me two options. So I can either have just random characters. That was the first password that we had before, kind of this. And the second one is the combination of words. And I can, for example, say, okay, I want to combine them just with space or with full stops, comma, underscore. And I can decide how many words I want to have. You can see the bar underneath the password. It shows us how strong that password is. I think I'm going to go with just random passwords because I don't have to remember it. It's my password manager who takes care of it. And I would say length of 20 is kind of secure. Let's make it 2 digits, maybe also 2 symbols. And there's also an interesting option. I can say avoid ambiguous characters. So for example, if you have a big O and a 0, those characters are kind of similar in a shape. And if you tick this, then it's not using them. But it's obviously reducing the number of letters. Okay, now I just say fill. It fills automatically the password field, and I say next. Okay, now 1Password asks me if I want to save this. This is the same functionality you already know from Chrome, built-in functionality, and so on. Okay, I think I'm going to save this. Let's call it Master Twitter, and I can also assign tags if I want to organize it. Here also see that I can decide between updating an existing account, because I already have 2 Twitter accounts, or creating a new one. It's kind of, most of the time it's quite intelligent and it knows it's a sign-up, so it will prefer the create version here. And I can also decide on which vault I want to save it. I now have 2 vaults, and the nice thing is if I'm in an organization, I can decide not to save it in my personal vault, then, for example, in a shared vault where multiple people or whole department has access to. In this case, it's just my personal account. I save it, and if I open up again, I will see that there are now 3 Twitter accounts in there. Okay, I think we skip this for now. Oh yeah, let's follow Mesut Özil. Okay, let's skip this. And we are logged in with our new account. To get rid of this red bar, we should just verify our email address. It's not there yet, so let's just resend it. Okay. There it is. Confirm. And yeah, we're done. So now we have our account, and we got this handle here, this user account. And Twitter is special in that way because they didn't ask me for a username, they just assigned me one. So in this case, 1Password does not know yet what my username is, but I can simply tell 1Password. So I'm just copying that name and open my 1Password again. And it's this here, so I go into the detail mode, into the edit mode, and say, okay, username is this. Okay, that's it. Well, has it saved it? Yeah, save it please. And now it's saved. So now what we can do is, we can log out, and yeah, we are on the login screen. I just use my hotkey. I say, okay, I want to log in as Max Muster. It's putting in the credentials. I didn't hit enter or didn't click the button, it just signed in by itself. So this is everything. So easy can it be, just automatically saving and then it's just signing in. And there's one thing that I like even more, and this is basically when you go or navigate in the web, you usually open a new tab and then you type in where you want to go. When you start using password managers like 1Password, you're not doing that anymore. So what I do is, I know I'm not logged in Twitter, so I open up 1Password, I type in Twitter, this is the account I want to use, and I hit enter. It opens a new tab, puts in the information, presses the submit button, and I'm logged in. So really comfortable to use. Okay, next up we want to change our password because we heard that there are insecure passwords around and we're not sure. 20 characters, is it enough? Let's make it 30. So we go to the settings, we hit the password, and now, you know, always when you change your password, you have to type in your old password again. So let's open up and say, yeah, please put that in. And we need a new password. Oh, it sent it. That's nothing that we want to have. So in this case, we just copy it, put it in here, and now we need a new password. So again, we use the password manager for it, in this case, the password generator, and we increase from 20 to incredible 30 characters. By the way, if you're not like that password for whatever reason, just click on regenerate and it will generate as long as you click. So now I say fill, it will know that it has to fill the new password fields, and now I can save. And if I save, this pops up again and it says me, hey, you just typed in new credentials on this website. You probably want to update an existing item on your vault. And in this case, it says updating. It selected the right user because this is the one I used last. So I say update, and it's done. So I don't have to copy and paste stuff around and probably copying space more than I should or something else. It's not that way. It's working completely automatic. You basically would interact with a password manager with some neat tricks of 1Password, to be honest. Not all the features are available on every password manager. Now let's do another thing. You probably heard of something that is called two-factor authentication, which means once you log in somewhere, you have to put in some more information in order to verify it's you. Usually you have an authenticator app, you receive a short message and you have to type something in. If you like, then the password manager or the right password manager can also take care of this. So for example, if we go to Facebook, Facebook is something many people would think, oh, maybe it's not so sensitive thing, but I think you don't want that somebody takes over your Facebook account. So again, I'm on Twitter right now, selecting Facebook. It's opening up, putting in the credentials, logging in, and now I'm asked for the two-factor authentication that is required. And I'm wondering right now, because there should be a pop-up up here, that it put it on, oh yeah, there it is. 1Password knows about that I have two-factor authentication activated, and after it fills out the form, it puts the two-factor authentication code to my clipboard, and I can just paste it, and I'm done. Yeah, I'm not trusting this browser. And now I'm in. So then you can save your second device, but I have to admit two-factor authentication is there for a reason, because you should have another device to use. So maybe it's not the best to use your password manager also for two-factor authentication. It's just a feature I want to show you right now, that it's possible to combine that. Okay, next up, I want to show you a little bit more about context awareness. So what I will do is I will leave my browser for now, and I will change to a native app of the platform. So here is Spotify on macOS, and I'm now here and would like to log into Spotify. So again, I'm using my shortcut, the same I used in the browser, and it knows, again, although we're not even in the browser, that I probably want to have my Spotify credentials. This time, unfortunately, I cannot do the autofill because it's just supported on websites. But still, I just have to move here, hit copy, paste that in, and I'm logged in. It's still quite comfortable to use. And it's, in my opinion, quite amazing that they can do the same for websites and native apps alike. Okay, so far to the desktop examples. Now, one final example on mobile. So I'm going to synchronize my iPhone. Okay, there we are. And what I do now is I go to LinkedIn, and I'm currently signed out. So what I usually do is I go to sign in, obviously, and now I have to type in credentials. If you're on Android, you are lucky because Android has this custom keyboard. So I would just go to the keyboard switcher and would select the 1Password keyboard, would provide my credentials, and then it would fill in the information. Unfortunately, on iOS, it's a little bit more difficult. It's not providing that. There is this key icon here, but it incorporates just the internal password manager from Apple. And right now, there's just Airbnb saved on that. So I cannot use 1Password here. But still, there's multitasking, so it's not that difficult. I just leave the app, go to 1Password. As you can see, I can also use my fingerprint if I like. That also works with Touch ID on the MacBook and also on the fingerprint verification on Android. I go here, I say copy. Now I do the app switching, and now I can put in my password here. Unfortunately, I don't have the email address, so I have to go back. As you can see, it locks you out immediately, so it does not stay there in this open unlocked mode. So going here and doing the traditional thing I already did on KeyPass many, many years ago. But still, it works kind of simple if you're used to it. And you don't have to look up maybe a post-it somewhere on your desk or an Excel file or whatever. Okay, so this is how it works on mobile. Maybe I will show you the app. The app is quite similar to the desktop application. Obviously, it's a little bit dense because you have a smaller screen, but you can have, for example, your labels. You can organize by category. So, for example, I can say I have different vaults and I want to not show all the vaults all the time. So I can decide that. I have categories. So, for example, I have my credit card we had before. I can access this. So basically it's quite comfortable to use. It's a really polished app, and I can also create new items from here. When it comes to synchronization, I used Dropbox for it a long time, but due to the fact that I also have to remember my Dropbox password, and I think it's kind of uncomfortable still, I decided to use 1Password in the cloud. They have a nice cloud service, which you also can log on from your web browser. So it's my.1password.com. And, oh, thank you for telling. So let's change that. Whoa. There we are. And in order to log in, it's not just your email address and your master password. They will also provide you a key, because this web login could be kind of unsecure compared to the other security levels you have with the password manager. So they will provide a key to you. And to make it even more secure, I can just show it here because it's not my full key that they are showing once you're logged in. So they save it in the web browser, the key, but not the master password, which is the one you always have to type in. And then I can, whoops, is it right? Not sure. Yeah. And I also have access here. And having this cross-platform access to your password manager is one thing that LastPass, 1Password, and I think some others did many, many years ago, and now everybody is just following that way. So it isn't really making a big difference anymore. It's more on your personal preference, which password manager you would like to use. Okay, that's all with respect to the live demonstration. I'm going to sign out again. And let's continue on here. So this was the demonstration. To sum up, when choosing now for a password manager, make yourself clear, do you want to have an open source software, or is it okay for you if you have closed source software? I think the open source software is especially appealing to software developers who would like to have the chance to review, audit, or even contribute on the code. If you don't need to contribute or audit the code, if you just trust that company that they are doing good work with this password manager, and you're not too much into IT, go maybe with a paid closed source version. I think this will be much better than reusing passwords for 50 services. in the end, in my opinion, I think it's a matter of taste, philosophy, and trust. So who you can trust to synchronize and save your password vaults, although they are encrypted. So let's come to the slide where I would like to make you familiar with some options. It's kind of funny that we have KeePass 3 times, and this is the reason of open source, because people are at some point not satisfied with the development of a tool, and so they decide to fork it. And that happened twice to KeePass. And with every fork, they put a letter at the end, and another letter. So there's KeePass, the original version of it in version 2 right now. There's KeePass X, and there's even KeePass XC. It's different communities, basically the same. I'm not really sure if the file format is compatible to one another. But this is the classic when it comes to open source password managers. When I did my research about the password managers, I came across KeyWeb, and I didn't knew that before. It's basically compatible to KeePass files, but it's a much cleaner and much more modern interface. So if you're using KeePass and you're not really satisfied anymore, you should have a look at KeyWeb. It's really interesting. But if you're starting completely new, or you're open for something completely new, and you even would like to migrate all your passwords from your existing password manager to a new one, I would recommend have a look at Bitwarden. It's open source as well, and it's really nice because they give you clients for every operating system, and they even allow you to host the server by your own. So it's basically a Docker image you can use. You can put it onto your custom domain, and I think it's really interesting. So if you are into that, if you would like to take care of that by yourself, if you're not trusting any third party, then Bitwarden is for you. And the last one is the one I mentioned before. It's pass or passwordstore.org. It's basically a command line utility based on GNU Privacy Guard and Git. So now to the unnerdy choices on the right-hand side. So my personal preference still after 3 years is 1Password. There's also LastPass around for many, many years already with similar functionality. There is Dashlane, not that known in the German community. Safe and Cloud, the one I used in the past, also nice cross-platform compatibility. And for example, also there's NPass. And there are 3 dots because this list could go on for 100 more choices. But obviously there are more known choices and more like some underdogs in that software category. So in the end, it's up to you, but it would be nice if we have a discussion about the different options if you have made some experience with the others. And I promised I would like to say something about the built-in functionality of web browsers. So I think maybe more of you using that instead of a full-fledged password manager. It's also nice to use it, but I don't like it for one specific reason, and this is it's very limited. So the Chrome built-in smart lock mechanism works great if you're on Chrome. So if you're using Chrome on your desktop, no matter which machine, it's perfect. If you're using Chrome on iOS or on Android, amazing. But you obviously want to log in to other apps that are not a website. And then it's difficult to access it because they don't give you a companion app that makes it easy. And the same applies to Safari Safe Passwords, the Firefox Password Manager, and so on. They are always extending the functionality, but I would rather choose a full-fledged app that is cross-platform and independent of the actual web browser. Also, what happens if you, for example, want to use 2 web browsers at the same time, then you need to somehow synchronize it, and there's no easy way to do it. So, in my personal opinion, very convenient, but limited. Okay, final slide. Things you should keep in mind. So password managers can simplify credential management a lot, in my opinion, because you don't need to reuse passwords. You are not putting them on paper or saving them unencrypted on your computer. I would even go further. I would say everybody should actually use a password manager. Which one doesn't really matter, but everybody should use a password manager. But even a password manager just works if you're careful with your data. So you still need to choose a good master password. There is no other way. And you still need just a few other passwords or pins to remember. And this is, for example, the login to my operating system. I cannot access my password manager or not even type in my master password if I don't have the login for my machine. And this is something I have to memorize by myself. Or maybe the PIN here. Fingerprint is nice, but at some point the fingerprint authentication expires and you have to type in your password again. And yeah, or you're losing your finger, right? That's what you just wanted to say. Yeah. Anything like this could happen. And yeah, maybe you're using your password manager with your email address for cloud servers, then make sure you at least know the password of that specific primary email inbox of yours. So there are just a few passwords you still need to remember, but you can also put them on the password store, but make sure you have some device you can still access it. Otherwise, you're locking yourself out. Yeah, and one more time, never use credentials twice. This is very important because it's just so easy. If some database gets hacked, they will read out the credentials or they will somehow collect the login credentials and then they will use the credentials on other services and easily purchase things in your, on your behalf or transfer money out of your bank account. Be aware of that. All right, that's it with the presentation. Let's start the discussion. Yes.